That's Chrystia Freeland, your new finance minister. A bit of history there. She is the first woman ever to hold that position. Now, the Liberals are trying to present this whole series of resignations and prorogations as, well, it's just a great reset. The resignation of Bill Morneau was just some kind of conscious uncoupling from Justin Trudeau, not what the opposition calls it, a nasty divorce like, I don't know, they had with Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott. Will the opposition support the Liberals' refresh plan presented next month under the new finance minister, or will they force an election? And where does the we controversy go from here? Let's begin our show today with the Conservative finance critic, Pierre Poilievre. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us today. Justin Trudeau said, I want a confidence vote when Parliament returns on September 23rd. Will your party support the government, or is it willing to bring down the government and have a federal election?
We haven't seen the confidence motion, so I can't tell you how we vote on it.
Are you willing to have an election, though, if you think, as you've said repeatedly, the government's corrupt, Justin Trudeau's corrupt, you want him to resign? Isn't that reason enough at your earliest opportunity, which would now be September, to bring down the government?
We want the whole truth in the we scandal to become public before Canadians vote. We want the Ethics Commissioner to have the opportunity to expose what happened here. The Prime Minister personally intervened to give $500 million to a group that had paid his family $500,000. He moved to shut down any investigation into that personal corruption today. He shut down 3 committee investigations, effectively preventing us from asking questions. He was getting very uncomfortable with the revelations that had been coming out of those committees. And today he shut down the investigations and wants them not to reopen until almost October. Now, it's no surprise that he'd want to force an election before all those facts come out. Of course, they're going to be very damaging to him and his government, perhaps even criminal in nature. We think that Canadians should know those facts before they mark their X.
Okay, well, let me just pull back, and I understand you and some colleagues, including the NDP, have a letter that you want to release these 5,000 pages of documents on the we scandal. The Prime Minister said today, great, I've already ordered those to be released. Mr. Poilievre, you and everybody else in the committee can have them. You can spend the next 4 weeks studying them. When we return on September 23rd, which is the date the government's coming back anyway, go to town on it. How is that, as you say, I mean, believe me, I understand that these committees are shut down, and that's absolutely an element here. But now that you've got those documents, does that answer your question?
Of course not. We haven't heard from the person who presided over the we scandal, Minister Freeland. She's the chair of the COVID committee that approved the $500 million grant to this group that had been paying the Prime Minister's family. We haven't heard from the CFO of the we organization. And we haven't actually seen these documents yet, so we don't know if they're full of redactions that prevent Canadians from knowing the truth. We wanted the committee to continue to ask those tough questions and force witnesses to respond under oath. The Prime Minister has shut down those investigations so that he can cover up the scandal before we go back to the fall session.
Look, and I appreciate that this prorogation shuts down the committee, but the Prime Minister has testified in front of a committee. The Finance Minister has, Minister Qualtrough has, who's the Minister of Employment, Bardish Chagger, the Minister who actually was in charge of that program, the head of the Privy Council has, Mr. Shugart, the Deputy Ministers have testified. It's not like you've had nobody in front. Would you have called Chrystia Freeland in front of the Finance Committee if she was not elevated today to the Finance Minister, and now you say she's the person who presided over the whole scandal?
Yes.
You would have. Had you actually requested her before?
No, it was in our plans. We actually had a planning meeting tomorrow scheduled. I gather it's now being canceled because of prorogation. But we were going to plan the next phase of the study, and our plan was to put her name forward.
So just out of interest, if she, quote, presided over the whole scandal, as you're now saying, why didn't you call her earlier?
Oh, we're just getting started. As you know, Evan, this is a massive scandal. It's a $500 million scandal with numerous players that obviously collaborated to funnel this money to the group that paid the Prime Minister's family $500,000. And we are trying to work through all of the muck But there's so much of it that it takes some time, I'm afraid.
Okay, but so you haven't seen these documents, but you'll get those documents. So will the investigation into Mr. Morneau and others continue in September?
Yes, absolutely, and we may need to call him back. But I think that in fairness to Mr. Morneau, Justin Trudeau is the principal in this scandal. Morneau is being fired today because he took a $41,000 illegal vacation from We. But Trudeau's family took over $500,000 from We. That's 12 times as much money. So if Morneau is fired for 41 grand, why isn't Trudeau fired for $500,000?
Mr. Morneau, well, you know, we'll ask that to Mr. Trudeau. He alleges that this was just a resignation. I don't know if anyone believes that this is exactly why Mr. Morneau resigned. But Mr. Poilievre, you seem to be upset about the prorogation. You and I both know prorogation is a tool governments have used. The Harper government, the Chrétien government used it. Very famously, the Harper government used it to stop a confidence motion when the NDP, the Liberals, and the Bloc were ready to take down that government. That was controversial then. If you supported that prorogation, what's the problem with this one?
There's no problem with prorogation. The Prime Minister could have prorogued on September 22nd and had a throne speech the very next day, allowing the investigations into his corruption to go on throughout the rest of the summer and early fall. But he decided to make the prorogation effective today so that those investigations would shut down and give him some peace of mind.
Is it a little rich, though, for you to be criticizing that when in 2013 the Harper government did the very same thing? It's not like they prorogued and reset immediately.
No, in 2013, Stephen Harper wasn't under investigation for having his family take $500,000 from an organization to which he granted a $500 million payment. So no, the two are not the same at all.
Well, they're not exactly the same, but my point is the opposition then accused Stephen Harper of ducking a confidence motion and abusing power. You defended that. Now you're essentially saying the Trudeau government is ducking an investigation and abusing power. Isn't it kind of what was good for the goose is good for the gander?
Well, in 2013, there could have been no confidence vote for Harper to duck because he had a majority. So there was nothing to duck. There's nothing wrong with a prime minister occasionally proroguing, but not to shut down parliamentary investigations into corruption scandals that involve him flowing $500 million to a group that gave his family $500,000. That's unprecedented. And it's understandable that the Prime Minister doesn't want any more questions asked about this scandal, but he's abusing his power in order to shut it down and cover it up.
I'm talking about during, of course, the Harper minority government. Do you have confidence in Chrystia Freeland and what she will present as her new budget? Are you confident that she is the person to, as she says, rebuild better?
Well, I'd like to congratulate her on her new appointment today. I was a little surprised, though, Evan, that she was chosen. The Prime Minister is obviously trying to distance himself from the We scandal, but he's done so by appointing the person who presided over it as the head of the COVID committee that gave the We group $500 million after his family had received so much money from them. I know that Ms. Freeland is a big admirer of high taxes. For her, it's a religion. She said, amen to higher taxes. And of course, she failed in her negotiations with the White House to protect Canada's industries in the new NAFTA. We're now being hit with new aluminum tariffs. We face softwood tariffs, and Buy America that kills construction jobs for Canadians is still in place. All those things she accepted in her renegotiation of NAFTA with Trump. So it looks like the deal was great for Trump and bad for Canada, and she was the lead on that. So I'm a little surprised that we would have her in charge of our finances after that performance.
To be fair, though, you know, the aluminum tariffs and the softwood lumber were not part of the NAFTA negotiation deal at all. I appreciate that, but you're saying that she failed at that, and I should also just say, just to be fair, that Justin Trudeau today was asked directly, "Will you raise taxes?" and he said no. So we'll find out if he keeps that promise. Right. But he has now said there will be no new taxes. Yeah,
Evan. He's got some swampland to sell you in Florida as well. So if you believe him that when he says he won't raise taxes, You're believing the guy who claimed he didn't interfere in the SNC-Lavalin affair, who said he'd limit the deficit to $10 billion a year. I think, like I said, you might want to consider calling him up and buying that swampland in Florida if you believe anything he says.
Well, what I do is I predict everything but the future, so we'll find out if he actually keeps that promise. But I appreciate you joining us. It's going to be very, very busy fall season coming up. That's Pierre Poilievre. Thank you, sir. Good to have you on the program.